Hi everyone and welcome back to Purposive Communication class. So for today's lesson, we're going to be dealing with the types of communication. So types of communication is still under purposive communication, wherein we're going to be dealing with the different types of communication in terms of context, mode, purpose, and style. So let's now move on. So we do have different types of communication, and the first one is the types of communication according to mode. So basically, when we talk about mode, this is more of the type of communication in terms of its ways. And we do have that and dealing with communication as a mode, this is really an act or more of looking into the process in terms of imparting and sharing information between, expressing your desires, your needs, aspirations, dreams, goals, and ideas, thoughts, and all various kinds of information. So the first type of the type of communication according to mode is verbal and nonverbal communication. And I know you're very familiar with verbal and nonverbal communication. Verbal, this is more of spoken and written, while when we talk about nonverbal, this is more of what you see, like body languages, facial expressions, gestures, the proximity, I mean the space and context where you are speaking, and also in terms of their culture, beliefs, and like that. So once again, that's another type of communication according to mode. So the next one or the next type of communication according to mode is visual communication. Visual communication is basically a communication where you try to being communicated in terms of the things that you see, like on the wall, like pictures, flyers, everything. So that's visual communication, like through television, through your walls, through the things that you see. That's visual communication. So the next one is another type of communication is according to context. Context is basically more of, if you're going to define it, this is a more of situation. So what are the types of communication according to situation? So we do have intrapersonal communication. Intra means within or inside. So basically the communication is between you and yourself. So when interpersonal communication, like you're trying to think of what will happen tomorrow, and then trying to self reflect, trying to decide, trying to realize things. That's intrapersonal communication. So again, there is a communication within yourself. So the next one is interpersonal communication. If intra is within yourself, interpersonal is outside, meaning that the communication takes place with between you and other people. So that's the communication. So meaning there are participants within the communication and you talking to them. That's interpersonal communication. So next one is the extended communication. This is a communication that involves the use of electronic media. That's extended communication. Okay. So when you try to communicate using your messenger, Instagram, or your email, or what other forms of, or any other forms of electronic media. Next one is organizational communication. Organizational communication is basically a communication within the organization. This is more of focusing on the role of organizational culture, more of the talk of between an employer and employee or vice versa. So here for the organization structure, we do have two types: the formal communication and also the informal communication. Um, Here at formal communication and informal communication, this is more of when are you going to use formal communication and informal communication within the organization. So we do have two types of communication, the informal and informal. And the first one is formal. Formal is basically more of communication that takes place by a designated channel, a message flow between positions in the organization. In short, we try to use formal communication based on the status and position of people within the organization. So when we talk about the first part or the first type of formal communication within the organization is downward communication. What do you mean by downward? From the upper going to down. So meaning from the supervisor communicating with the ordinary staff. So in short, from the upper position going to the lower position. And what type of communication are dealing with that one? It's a formal communication because the one at the downward from the president are basically more of they are utilizing, I mean, knowledge. They have the affirmity, and therefore, since you are the boss, expect that the type of language that you use is more of authoritative. So did you see that? So that's downward communication. So again, the flow of communication is more of superior to subordinate. So therefore, more of looking into the activities are more of giving tasks to the subordinates, giving policies and like that. On the other hand, this is the other one is the opposite of the downward communication, which is the upward communication. Upward meaning from the lower administrative going to the higher administrative. So in short, these are subordinates going to the bosses. So if you're gonna be looking at it, I mean the people who are like employees, I mean the lower administrative, basically they're trying to use a little I mean they are using formal, but more of in respect, and more of the tone is um not overpowering, not overpowering the supervisors. Okay, so there is more of respect, there is more of looking into really submissive to the supervisor. So that's upward communication. The next one is the horizontal communication. From the word horizontal, meaning the same level. So the one communicating are in the same level. So your employee to your co-employee having the same position. Okay. This is more of a lateral approach as it takes place among people belonging to the same level, but coming from different departments or units to facilitate performance or tasks through proper coordination. Here, the communication is somewhat informal and more of cooperative, and more of the communication that revolves are very more of an open communication, unlike with the downward and the upward communication. So the next one is the crosswise communication. Crosswise communication is basically more of the communication is so flexible because there is a diagonal in nature as employees from different units or departments working at various levels of communication with each other. So from the supervisor going to the employee, employee to the co-employee, and then going to the other one. So again, there is a crosswise communication, meaning the communication varies depending on who are you talking with. Understand? So this is very important to really look into what type of communication are you going to use in a communication, I mean in an organization, because of course this will create this will create a barrier. Another one is they will create a chaotic kind of workplace if you're not looking really into the ethics and the flow and also the type of communication that you're using to your co-employees or to your colleagues within the organization. Okay, so let's move on. So we do have informal communication, maybe in some time, but not all the time. Because as you see, informal communication is more of this is an unofficial channels of message flow. This is known as grapevine messages coming from different levels of the organization are transmitted. So this occurs to the due to dissatisfaction of some employees accompanied by uncertainty, such as superiors playing some regulations. So informal communication really happens only sometimes outside of the organization, or sometimes like if they are killing time. But if you are working in a workplace, usually formal communication usually utilized. If there is already informal communication, definitely there is a misbehavior and all. So organizational culture really dictates the kind of behavior that employees should possess, as well as the extent of commitment expected from them by the organization. So if you're gonna be an employee in the future time, we really need to look into what type of communication, what appropriate communication are you going to utilize? Because that's part of really an etiquette when you are working already. So another type of communication is with according to context is intercultural communication. What do you mean by intercultural communication? This is a communication which is between or among people having different linguistics, religion, ethnic, social, and professional background. So in short, intercultural communication may evolve in a smaller or bigger group. Okay, so for example, in an organization, you have intercultural communication because you have a different linguistic, different religion, different ethnicity, or different professional background. So again, intercultural with the word inter meaning different. Okay, but when we talk about multicultural, usually a multicultural are more of coming from different countries living in a multicultural setting. However, we do have also multicultural setting here, but in terms of different provinces. Okay. As what I'm telling you, there are smaller and then bigger entity, or the micro and the macro. Okay. Next one is the types of communication according to purpose and style. Purpose and style is basically more of what is the purpose of communication and what style of communication are you going to utilize. Okay. Different situation may look into different purposes and therefore different style that you're going to utilize. So we do have formal communication. Formal communication will utilize formal language. Therefore, you're going to utilize this one whenever there is a formal setting. So meaning the purpose of formal language or formal communication is utilized in either a formal or written. And most of the time, they are utilized in presentation, thesis writing, letters to the organizations and committees and like that. So again, formal communication, formal language, okay, formal words. And also formal way of, the body languages and all. So next one is informal communication. Informal communication is a communication that you utilize for casual and unofficial form of communication. You use it when you're communicating with your friends, when you're communicating with your family. That's so casual. So meaning there's no particular structure and there's no particular formal words are you utilizing. So it's okay to utilize fillers, utilize the expressions because you're talking to casual people also that you have something like closer relationship. So let's now move on. A model is often abstract. It is a representation of a real world phenomenon applied to different forms. So I guess we have already discussed about the communication models. Am I right? And with that, through that communication models, we need to look into general principles of effective communication. First, you need to know your purpose. And through that purpose, you will also need to utilize your audience, know your topic, know your speech content, and then work on the feedback. And knowing those principles of effective communication, eventually you will know what type of communication are you going to utilize, how are you going to behave, and therefore, really looking into, avoiding the misinterpretation and there is a successful action in terms of communication. So these are the 7 C's of communication, meaning you really need to really apply that one so that there is an effective communication. First, you need to be considerate. Second, courteous. Third, clear. Fourth is correct. Fifth is complete. Sixth is concise. And 7 is concrete. So those 7 C's of communication will be very helpful in terms of being an effective communicator and avoid misinterpretation and miscommunication. So these are the ethical considerations in communication wherein we have already learned this one, but we're just gonna be reiterating this one. So ethics is basically more of what should be the right and wrong behavior that we need to do whenever we are communicating, I mean. So the first one is you need to respect your audience, either from different hierarchy and all. You need to respect. It's either from younger ones to adult ones to older ones. Still, you need to respect audience so that there is no misinterpretation and there is no miscommunication, and therefore no barriers will be coming. Second, you need to consider the result of communication. So that's a thing. So if you want to really solve the problem, don't argue. Solve the problem and not argue. Third, you need to value the truth. Really need to look into the truancy of information. Fourth, use information correctly so that there is no misinterpretation and miscommunication. And fifth, do not falsify information so that there will be no miscommunication. So I guess that would be all, everyone. Now, if you have any questions, just message me into the PM, or you can just message me into our GC or into our Google Classroom. So that would be all, everyone. Have a nice day and goodbye.